Now, similar to how we've been configuring all these different objects that fold into other objects for quota and file screening management, it's here where we can also define storage reports management, or essentially how we can configure the storage reports that we're interested in. If I take a look here, you see that we can configure a report to occur on a scheduled basis. We can add or remove a report for a later report task, one that would be associated with, for example, a quota that gets exceeded or a file screen that's tripped. Or we could generate new reports based off of the ones that we have now. Let's choose, instead of the task here, because we've seen that already, let's choose to schedule a storage report. Here we can configure the report name, so our report. And here we can identify the different reports that we should generate. Now, this is a pretty standard list of reports that are available. So duplicate files, the audit by file group, files by owner, and so on. For each of these, you'll find that there are parameters that are associated with them that will help you determine exactly what you want to see in the report. For the most part, the reports themselves are fairly static in that you won't find yourself creating more reports, but it's the parameters here that will help you further tailor these down to something that is important to you. Each different report has a different set of parameters that you may want to consider. So in this case, the minimum number of days since the event occurred and which file screening events, whether it's for all users or certain users. Down here, files by file group changes it to the specific file groups you're interested in. So configuring these is important as you define exactly what storage reports you want whenever you kick this thing off on a scheduled basis. Now, once we configure what the settings should be for the report we're interested in viewing, we then need to define what the scope will be. So what kinds of files are we interested in? These can be application files, backup and archival files, group files, and user files. And then sub to those categories, you can then identify the folders that should be included there in the scope. So if I'm interested in user and group files that correspond with that company shared location, this would give me all the information that exists in the share that we configured for replication back in that last module. Once we define the scope, then the delivery item over here is where we then identify, I've got to actually enter in something there, is where we identify where we want to send the reports to. So do we want to send the reports to the following administrators? Also, where do we want the reports to be saved to? And then lastly, for the schedule over here is where we want, or when we actually want to run this report. So every day at 3 in the morning, go ahead and inventory the server and provide me with a report on all the things that I'm interested in. Now, for these storage reports, I do want to identify back up here under the root of FSRM, just back here under configure options, that there are a couple of items here we should take a look at. The first of which is just the default parameters for the reports that you're configuring. Now, I showed you that for each of the reports, there are some parameters that you can set that are specific to that report, but you can set here some default ones that exist across all reports. You could also review reports with the button down here and set also a maximum number of files to include in those storage reports as well. Now, setting this maximum number of files can be handy so that you don't find your server chewing away at CPU trying to find every single file and folder in that path. Also, here is where we can define where those report locations should go. So a second ago, I showed you that generating a report would automatically drop it in that location. Well, this is the place where we can define what that location will be.